Matt, welcome. The door's a little higher, so you don't have to bump your head. Where's our guys? Come on. Bill and Robert, come on down.
I'm mighty sorry to tell you, you're not able to stay, but we hope you enjoy the program.
That pretty much summarizes it. Gentlemen, here's your microphones.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is it on? You have to push the button.
These are on, so don't go to the bathroom.
As you can see, we're well prepared this program today before our notes go.
Yeah, we have all the notes. I gave them the questions early, but we did this thing in May. I interviewed him for videotape, and it was so great. We said, we got to do this live. So we've all forgotten the questions, so it'll be fresh anyway. Let me introduce, for those of you that don't know, for the younger members of the club, Bill Simpson was the president in 1975. He's married, his wife's Edith. Bill's been a member since 1963. So if you do the math, that seems to me like about 55 years, right? 56 years. Yeah. He was late in 63, like April. Bill's a distinguished native of Raleigh and a Broughton High School grad. He served with distinction in World War II, recipient of 3 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, 3 Battle Stars for service in Italy, France, and Germany during the war from 43 to 45. Bill met several German Tiger tanks and German artillery pieces and outran all but 2 or 3 of them. He had significant combat experience from Anzio to Germany, and he single-handedly captured a German platoon in the Alsace. After the war, and North Carolina State University, Bill served the university as a placement director for the College of Engineering in 1957, assistant to the Dean of Engineering in Industrial Relations, and then was chosen by Chuck's dad, John, as chancellor to become his assistant. He was assistant to the provost and to the board of trustees in 1962, served as secretary of North Carolina State University from 70 until his retirement in 1990. He remains active in the First Baptist Church, and he's not just an institution in Raleigh, he is our own institution. So we'll go through with him. And beside him, of course, is his good friend forever, Robert McMillan. He was president in 1992 of our club, Wake Forest and Carolina grad, Carolina Law in 49. He's been a member since, I'm not sure because it had 2 backward slashes on the directory.
65.
65, okay. He's just a young type. That one I can add, that's 64, right? 54 years, right? Close enough. He's also a distinguished native of Raleigh and Broughton High School grad. He was a Marine officer during both World War II and then called back for Korea. After getting his degree at Carolina, he began his career with his father's firm of Douglas and McMillan here in town. This is a quote: Robert is generally referred to as the dean of the local bar and recognized as having bootstrapped the criminal bar in North Carolina from the backwaters to boasting some of the top criminal lawyers in America. And he's been a mentor to all of them. In over 68 years of practice, he handled a variety of cases and legal problems. He started primarily as a later became a trial lawyer in criminal defense and handled a myriad of misdemeanor and felony cases, including over 50 murder cases. 50 alleged murder cases. Is that right, Robert? He's also served as a deacon, Sunday school teacher, and a respected voice in our club and within the Pullen Memorial Baptist Church community, and he also served as a Boy Scout Master, commander of Raleigh's American Legion Post Number 1, key driver in the creation of Raleigh Farmers Market, chair of the Raleigh Historic Sites Commission, instrumental in establishing Mordecai Square Historic Park. He's a member of the Raleigh Hall of Fame and the North Carolina Bar Association General Practice Hall of Fame, a champion for justice, compassionate humanitarian, and a fearless servant leader, and a damn good singer. So that's going to be our guys today. So I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. So we're also going to, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and if they have the answers, I'll give them. And if you have questions, forget it. I'm going to ask you questions today. We may have some time at the end, though. All right, this is for Bill and Robert. Let's see, Robert, let's start with you. You guys have been friends for many, many years. Tell us when you first met, and then a bit about your background growing up in Cameron Park.
Well, am I doing this right with the microphone?
Yes, get it closer.
I suppose I was 13 when Billy came upon me in my life. And I was greatly disappointed to see him because he had displaced the love of my life, Margaret Cutliff, who was married to Frank Weather, I believe, used to be a member of this club. At any rate, Margaret was my sweetheart in silence and in secret. She lived next door, and I enjoyed waving at her. I don't know that I ever worked up enough nerves to courage to talk to her. But at any rate, I admired her from afar for years. And I was greatly disappointed when she left. And the only solace I had was a billy goat that I kept in the backyard, where Walk Over Bank now has a branch in Cameron Village. And then into my life entered Billy Simpson. And it was slow going, and it didn't improve much, because in every endeavor we shared experiences, he excelled. He was far better than I in horseshoeing and in everything else, except that I did smell stronger than he did, because I was more closely associated with my billy goat than he was. And now with that, I will yield to him for his impression of meeting me.
There you go. Bill, the floor is yours.
I don't know where to go from here. But it was a pleasure moving next door to Robert, a man of many talents. His family's of many talents. He was North Carolina Family of the Year, and Roy and that, didn't know that era Robert was growing up. But it was a pleasure to be next to a family like that. Every morning during the school year, we would get up, go in Robert's backyard, and walk through this little dirt path that brought to high school, which is now Clark Avenue. That was all woods back there, and so all the way back to Williamson Drive, I believe it was. And so we had just a lot of woods to play in. We had a little baseball field down there, and we did other things as well. But since coming to Rotary, I finally got up enough nerve to call him Robert. See, he was Mr. McMillan to us young fellows coming out. He's 15 months older than me. And Robert was 2 years ahead of me in school. See, I remember him at Wiley School, but he remember me, because he ain't a small undergraduate like that. But Robert was a big wheel wherever he went. He went over to Broughton, as he said. He was president student body there. He was a star on the football team, a lineman at that. He was a type player that was hit the opposing team, the offense coming to him, and then he would tackle a fella, then he'd say, "Nice play, let me help you up." And then he'd knock him down again the next but vicious player in that, and a good football player, by the way. Wake Forest showed interest in him when he finished high school, but service came along and kept him from going over there to play or anything. But it's just a pleasure to be with Robert. We kind of lost touch with each other because he was in the law and I was in prison. and he had very little to do with it. But when we came to Rotary, it was great to get back together again and to renew old acquaintances and see each other at least once a week, sometimes 2 times a week there, and just to reminisce and catch up with what's going on. But if you ever have a neighbor, this is the greatest neighbor you could ever have, I grew up with.
Robert, tell me about Broughton High School, Cameron Park, and Bill's basketball expertise.
All right, we're talking about a town that had 37,000 people in it. When Billy and I were there, I remember a sign on Hillsborough Street said, Raleigh, capital of North Carolina, population 37,000. That stood on Hillsborough Street just east of Brooks Avenue. So everybody knew everybody else. There were several neighborhoods in Raleigh. Cameron Park, Hayes Barton, we all called it Hayes' Bottom. We were envious of them, but the only thing we could do would be to show a lack of respect for them by calling it Hayes' Bottom rather than Hayes' Barton. Hayes Barton, by the way, was the home of Sir Walter Raleigh in England, according to what Billy told me. I don't know. But anyway, there was Mordecai, Oakwood, Idlewild, South Park, Method, Orland Heights, and other neighborhoods. Cameron Park was a close-knit neighborhood of state employees, NC State University employees, and professional people. And it was a grand neighborhood to grow up in. Everybody knew everybody else. And we might go into some more details later about this, but Billy and I became great friends, and we had other good friends in this neighborhood. It's hard to describe in today's world how cordial everybody was to everybody else. Every home was open to every child. Everybody knew everybody else. And the children ran free everywhere except this. I'll say this. Nobody was out of place after 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock p.m., everybody rushed home to hear Little Orphan Annie on the radio. And you could get all kinds of devices for secret codes and what have you. If you got a box of Ovaltine, some kind of weird drink, and took off what was called, I called it the facsimile. After I finally went to school for years and years, a facsimile. I never got the legal thing for a prize, but I did get a facsimile several times. But it was not enough of a facsimile for me to receive anything from the Ovaltine company. But from what I understand, for those who drank Ovaltine, I didn't miss much. I could go on and on and on, but I might want to yield to Bill.
Bill, what was it like growing up here? And then also talk about the war years when folks were going off to war, including your experience heading off.
Well,
I wanted to get back to that too.
We'll get that into you.
So Robert went in along for, Robert 2 years older than I am.
Let me tell you.
Robert will set the stage. I think we're getting used to this now.
Starting on Park Drive, over the road, we had Rhett Winters, Nelson Winters, Dora Winters. Rhett was my only friend who was 4F, and she was blind to see. His sister Elsa married a Navy pilot who got killed. 2 doors down was Leon Williams, who had the saddest story of all. Leon was a bright young man who got a ROT commission at state. A year before Pearl Harbor, he went to Clark Field in the Philippines. He was captured. He survived the Bataan Death March. He was killed by American bombers following a Japanese prison ship, thinking that it was a troop carrier. And so Leon was killed that way. Billy was in the next house dying, and my brother Archie and Archie was in the Marines, and he was a hero. I was not. I just did what they told me to do. But Archie and I were in the Marines, and Trent and Billy Ragger were across the street, naval officers. Around the corner, Freddie Center was in the Army. His brother-in-law, Warren Wooden, was in the Army. Warren was killed, leaving one child, and he had a child born after he was killed. Then we moved on down the street to Fred Miller, Godfrey Chester Jr., Godfrey Chester Sr., Joe Chester, Jimmy and Isaac Wright. All of these people served in World War II. They were all playmates. Around the corner, John Hilton and Kenneth Hilton lived. John was killed in the war. I went on down the street to Vernon Jeter, Devan Barber, Robert Ponton, D.R. Ponton, and the next street over the Broughton boys, Melville and Bobby were in service, and their cousin Tom was a Marine across the street. Victor Bell down the street was in the service. Down on Park Drive, Robert Ott, Robert Reynolds, Ross Reynolds, and their sister Dorothy Reynolds, all were in service. Jimmy Walker, there were 6 children in the Walker family. Jimmy Walker and his 4 brothers, 3 brothers were in the Marines. He had a baby brother in the Navy, and his sister was in the Red Cross. Up the street were the Mitchell boys, both in the service. Lewis Wooten and Bobby Wooten were in the service. In the next block, we had Deborah Johnson, Hank Johnson, William Johnson, all in service. Their sister was married to Charles Styron, a doctor who served on Saipan with the Marines. And then we had next door Lawrence Holden and Willis Holden and Tootsie Holden. And Lawrence was killed. And across the park we had Bobby Finch, we had Emil Hilton, who was killed. His 2 brothers were there. And up on Calvin Road, Billy Walton, Russell Walton, and Johnny Walton all served. Billy was horribly mangled in a glider crash in France. Matar Davison was in the next house. He was killed. On up the street were the Beckwith boys, both of whom served. And down on Park Drive, we had Paul Moore, a naval officer, Ralph Reeves, Owen Reeves, Jimmy Reeves, all served. Up the street, you had Marion Fuller, and then you had Jimmy Little, who served as a Marine officer, Robert Little as an Air Corps officer, and the 2 White brothers who were there, and Rover Poole served, and then the New World boys were there. So everybody in the neighborhood served. We had 2 friends, and they were good friends, and they're dead now, but they're still friends. They were conscientious objectors. They did not serve, but they were required to do certain duties. They didn't get off scot-free, but nobody blamed them for being conscientious objectors. Now, across St. Mary Street, you had Laverne Jeffries, a Wiley boy who got killed. You had Jack Lancaster, who got killed. You had Jack Ashley, who was captured by the Germans and had a steel implant in his skull by German surgeons. And Jack had no use for the German army, but he had great respect and love for the German doctors who inserted that steel plate. He lived with it the rest of a long, fruitful life. And then we had Eric Briggs around the corner on Hillsborough Street. He died in service. And his neighbor Carl McLean died. And up on Clark Avenue, there was Jake McLean who was killed in service. And in my church, there were 55 young men from the church in service. 10 were killed. All of them were precious. And all of these people that I've named, I knew intimately. And Billy knew these people intimately, just as we know you all. And they loved America. Now I'm going to yield to Billy again, and then later I'm going to tell you all something about an experience Billy and I had at Pinehurst 3 years ago at a Marine Corps reunion where I was here with Billy right now for a while.
He has one of those. And you wonder why this is the greatest generation. This is about a 4-block circle square in Cameron Park that Robert just described. Bill, tell me about your experience. I know you first went into Sicily, or at least Anzio.
Yeah, in Italy.
In Italy. Yeah, tell us about that
Well, I tell you,
experience.
when I turned 18, which was on May 7th, just before graduating from Broughton, I got home from school that day, and there was this beautiful, official-looking envelope addressed to me. And I said, this is impressive. Opened the thing up and said, your friends and neighbors have selected you. When the folks came home that night, I said, do you know the names of these people who selected me? I said, I'm sure Robert would look out for me a little better. But a few weeks later, just as soon as we graduated, we were called into service, but they took us, several of us did not have to go in after the first week or two because the freshmen from the year before at Billy College were called before us. They turned 18 ahead of us. And so I had a little bit, about 2 months before I actually went into service. Went to Fort Bragg. From Fort Bragg, went to Fort McClellan, Alabama, which was an infantry replacement thing. I had originally applied for the Air Force, went through the whole question and everything else there, and they said, okay, you five of us, go through that door, you can sign and be official members. Well, they said, oh, by the way, we forgot to give you all the test for your eyes as far as colorblindness goes. And so 2 of the 5 were colorblind and didn't know it. So that was the reason I got in the infantry come this summer. 16 weeks, I never fired anything except a BB gun in my life. We went to Fort McClellan, Alabama, 16 weeks down there, and then they shipped us overseas. And after basic training. And of course that basic training woke all of us up because we hadn't had that type of experience before. We went overseas, went to Africa, and from Africa we went to Italy, and that's when the Germans held Rome and were holding Italy. You know, picture the leg of Italy. You look down, it's very narrow across there, so the Germans could defend it very well. So we went over as replacements. We were told we were going to a place called Anzio. And what the Allies had done, and they couldn't get through what they had hoped to. They was going straight up. So what they did, they had an invasion, went around for where the German lines were, and invaded there, which was about 30 miles from Rome. And so we joined them about the 3rd day they were up there, and stayed for the entire 4 months that Anzio was there. Well, I hope you'd find out about Anzio. Most people have never heard of it, but you'd find out about Anzio. But it was one of those things where we had open space to go. We could have gone to the edge of Rome, but our commanders, the generals, said, no, let's don't take a chance. So as a result, we sat on the beach for several days before we started out. When we started out, we were on the plains. I tell you, picture Duke University's football stadium. The open end of the horseshoe. It's like coming in the open end of the horseshoe, get about the 20, 25-yard line, and there you are. Then they said, okay, let's move in. When we did, Germany had already brought in several divisions in the mountains all around us, just like they were in the stadium at Duke, we were out on the field. So we were there 4 months where they could see us every day, every move we made. And at nights when we did our patrolling and things such as that to get information and make movement as far as troops go. But anyway, after 4 months, we moved out of Anzio. I was a first scout with the 45th Division, that's the Oklahoma Division. And I was the first one to move out the day we were going in to get out of Anzio. And luckily I got through the whole day, got to the end of the day where our objective was, which was a railroad overpass. And just as we got there, I was here, our second scout was in sight of me. That's the way they would keep sight. And the main body stayed in sight with the second scouts, so they were ways back. I heard this tank. It came under the overhang there, over the bridge, under the bridge. So right towards me was a German tank. And there we were standing facing each other. They had that 88 gun right there. They had their machine guns and all. And they stopped, and I stopped. We were about 50 yards apart, I guess, just facing each other. And so I said, my Lord, what are we going to do here? And so about that time I heard the noise of putting an 88 into their gun. They shot that. I hit the ground. It went just over me, exploded, and I was wounded in the back. But the same thing that surprised me, they shot just that one big gun, 88 field artillery piece. They had machine guns that didn't shoot. The tank turned around and went the other way. I really think what happened, they were so surprised that any American people would be that far inland on one day thing. We were way ahead of schedule as far as pushing inland on that particular day. But I don't know what else you want to know.
Well, let's see, that's the first time you were hit. Then you were hit later on in Italy?
I was hit twice, and hit at one time at Anjo, in the middle of the 4 months we were there. Strange thing there, I was hit in the head, and by a shell that just wiped out our foxhole. Two fellows that jumped in to get protected from this artillery. And we got up, and they were buried. I had to dig them out because the shell had hit right on the edge of the foxhole. We got up, went over the next foxhole, and that's when my helmet came off, and they realized that I was bleeding. A piece of artillery shell had gone through my helmet liner, my little cap I had on, and into my skull. And would somebody get that phone, please? I'll listen for it the next time too.
And then did you meet Irving Berlin then?
This is what happened. They sent me back, and I spent a full day in a little house that had been hit several times, and they told me somebody would pick me up the next night. This was 24 hours later. So I was there, and that particular building was shelled twice. Those 24 hours I was there. Then that night, in comes a Jeep to pick me up, and they carried me back to one of these little MASH, what you call now, hospitals, you know, the tent thing. Well, they operated that night on my head. They put a bandage on that, made me look like the Sheik of Araby. It just went way up. Then they shipped me out the next day, and I went down to Naples. I got down there, and we were in the hospital, had a doctor check it out, but they kept that big thing on. Well, we were sitting there looking, catching up on information, and here came this elderly gentleman, that in and started going from different beds there. Finally, he got to me, and he said, he shook my hand, he said, hello, he says, my name's Irving, what's yours? And I told him Bill. It was Irving Berlin. And so we talked, he said, I'm giving a program this afternoon at 3 o'clock right across the street, and I want you to come. I said, yes, sir. Now he was, remember I said, elderly, he turned out to be 52 years old at that time. But when you're 18, people look a little, but anyway, I went to the show that afternoon at the 3. He nodded to me, he recognized that thing on over my head, and we enjoyed his program very much. In fact, he asked for different requests, and people gave it to me. But then somebody says, how about singing one of your best known songs, Over There? He said, I didn't write Over There, that was George M. Cohan. But he said, if George M. Cohan had not written it, I would have. But the next day, the doctor came in. He said, did I hear you at the program yesterday? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, if you can go there, you can go back to the front. And so
that's why I don't go to concerts.
So they took off that big bandage that night, put on a small one up there, and I was shipped out the next afternoon to what they call a rebel depot, where they would get the replacements come in and send up. and we spent one night there. And then I was sitting back up to Adjo again. For the first 2 weeks back there, I could not wear my helmet. I would hold it just right over my head whenever we got shelled, but I couldn't wear it and let the pressure come down on it. So that was an interesting experience to have, but I didn't have to go on patrol to do those 2 weeks, thank goodness.
So let me jump up real quick and finish up World War II. Besides the Alsace and Germany experience in France, you were shot in the foot and lucky to survive an overdose of morphine or something, and got back to Savannah, was it?
No,
Charleston. And tell us who you met in a hospital bed there.
We landed about 10 a.m. in Charleston. I was going back across through the Mediterranean and South Atlantic. And we got down, it was a hot day, it was April the 12th, 1945. And so it was kind of hot in that barracks type thing we were in. And then the door opened at the end. We were about 20 of us in that particular ward. And two elderly ladies came in with great big hats on. And they started going from bed to bed to bed. And finally word spread, that's Helen Keller. And her interpreter, you know, Helen Keller could not speak, could not hear, could not see. I mean, she could speak in her language. But it was one of those things that was really something to see. When she got to my bed, her interpreter said she'd like to ask you some questions. And so Helen Keller would put her two fingers right up to your lips like this, and you would talk, and then she would tap into her interpreter's palm with her answer. And so it was an interesting type thing. She asked her questions about this and that and the other. And finally she ended up with the last of the 20 in there, got to the door, and one of the fellows in there said to the interpreter, said, please tell Miss Keller how much you have meant to us today. And then she tapped it to Helen Keller, and Helen Keller gave the answer back to her interpreter and said, Miss Keller said, if I've done so much with so little, how much ought you to do with so much? And everybody in there was upgraded after that. They just were uplifted as to what she'd been doing with the problems she had in life, and ours was kind of small compared to it, and I think it inspired all of us to do better.
Well, let's jump up to Rotary now. When did you guys join Rotary? Who sponsored you? And what was it like back then? Robert.
Ruffin Bailey was a lawyer here in Raleigh. He was a friend of mine. He law school with me. Ruffin Bailey taught me into joining the Rotary, and he was president at the time. And another friend of mine, a lawyer, was the rising president, Jim Curry. So I joined, sort of reluctantly. I don't know how old I was. I was over 40, and I was very busy. But I decided to join, and I'm glad I did. I've enjoyed it very much. I've had very pleasant relationships all along the way. And Billy, of course, was a veteran, and we had another mutual friend, Cameron Park boy, I failed to mention, who lost his arm in the war, Jerry Stockard. He was a president one time while I was there. Two other men who many of you know, George and Bill Basin, were Cameron Park boys, and they were in service. And Craven Turner and Johnny Perry was another one who was killed. But my Rotary Association has been very fruitful, often inspiring, very often amusing, and once in a while embarrassing. But well, the year I was president, the treasurer, for some strange reason, defalcated with all the funds. Fortunately, we were able to recoup. But that's the literal truth. When I was president, the treasurer was bone dry because the treasurer had taken all the money. Anyway,
That was the fifth of the four-way test, I guess?
first, me before first.
Exactly.
At any rate, my experience has been good, and I recommend it. You know, if any of you might have read Babbitt by Sinclair Lewis, the Rotary gets a poor press, but Rotary is a wonderful organization. It does a great deal of good locally, and it even does more good from an international standpoint in building international goodwill and helping people in greater need in foreign lands. So I'm all for Rotary.
Bill, tell us about your experience and where'd you all meet and what all was involved?
Well, my first experience with Rotary was in December 1938. I was in the 8th grade at Broughton High School and in the choir, in the glee club, and the Rotary Club, I'd never heard of any of the civic clubs at that time, had invited us to sing for their Christmas program. And it was right in the Subalta Hotel, that big ballroom overlooking Hillsborough Street. And we went in, and the reason I was in there, my voice hadn't changed yet. They were looking for a couple of three boy tenors. So that was me. I didn't know much about music. But we went into that big room, the ballroom, and I was on the top of the bleachers that they had over right towards the window. I could look right down Fayetteville Street, see the Christmas decorations that were up there. It was a cold, drizzly looking day, but just still lights on the flashing Christmas lights were really something to see. But I'd never been downtown in the middle of a school week, so this was, I didn't know what was going on until I saw how beautiful it was. But anyway, on that particular day, we sang, and I got home that night. My folks said, the dinner table said, well, what did you experience today? I said, you'll never believe it. I said, I saw the mayor, I saw several pictures of people I've seen pictures of in the paper that were in the legislature and city council, things such as this, and it was amazing to look out and see familiar faces. Some names I knew, some names I didn't. And one of them happened to be well, he was my folks' doctor, but he was a member of Rotary. And then years later, when I joined Rotary, he said, call me Joe, Joe Combs. And he said, don't call me Dr. Combs, call me. Well, that's a hard thing to do for a young fellow. But anyway, I tried. So the next time the folks were with me, they called him Dr. Combs. I called him Joe. But one day at school, I was at state at the time working with Chuck Caldwell's dad, Chancellor Caldwell, and he called me in one Monday morning and said, Bill, he said, we're looking for some young fellows in Rotary, and I'd like to take you down and just kind of see what you think and what they think. So we went to Rotary that day, and we sat and we met people, and came back and said, I'd like to sponsor you for membership in Rotary, and because we do need some younger fellows. I was 30, in the 30s then. So that's how I got into Rotary, was through Dr. Caldwell, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But 56 years later, I'm still enjoying it.
What's been kind of your proudest moments of in Rotary? What has Rotary done that's inspired you probably the most important development?
This opens the door. How much time have we got?
Enough time to talk about our better halves in here.
All right. My greatest experiences in Rotary are largely due to the good influence of Bill Simpson, largely due to the good influences of Bill Simpson and Chancellor Caldwell. Chancellor Caldwell was almost completely responsible for removing all racial restrictions against membership. Chancellor Caldwell also was significant in having the club open up to women. And I don't know where this club would be today. It would be so far out of touch with what's right about America if we had not removed racial restrictions and had we not started taking in women. Now, here's why I asked about time. And I alluded a few moments ago to Billy and I going to a Marine reunion in Pinehurst. And this gets back to Cameron Park, the small town Raleigh. How many people in this room have ever heard of a man named Oscar Petrus?
One.
All right. Oscar Petrus was one of the greatest citizens who ever lived in Raleigh. And Billy and I were little boys, and we referred to him as Pig Petrus. Pig Petrus was born and raised on Brooklyn Street where it intersects St. Mary's. In 1938, he joined the Marines with an ROTC commission from state. And he stayed in the Marines, and he was a Marine officer who ultimately retired as a Major General. But this is not about Oscar Petrus. This is about Harry Truman, in a way. Probably no one in here knows that Harry Truman integrated the armed forces. One of the greatest things he ever did, and Harry Truman did many great things. We don't have time for you to go into that, but at any rate, Harry Truman integrated the armed forces. But before that time, African American troops were second-class troops. They were laborers. They couldn't hold positions. They couldn't do anything. Harry Truman changed that. 3 years ago, Billy and I were at this Marine Corps reunion, and I was scheduled to be on the program. The only reason I was invited was I was the only World War II Marine officer they could find. The rest of them had gone to the great beyond. But at any rate, we went, and it was a grand occasion. There were 3 Marine Corps generals there on the program. Fine-looking Major General who looked like Randolph Scott. Fine-looking man, looked like a Major General. And there was the top man there was a Lieutenant General, and he was an African-American Lieutenant General. And I felt so proud, and I thought back of when I was in the Marines, Harry Truman integrated the services. And here was a Lieutenant General in the Marine Corps, and I had never seen a general before. When I was in the Marines, I never saw a general. He was a Lieutenant General in the Marine Corps. He's an African-American. Good fella. Hail fella, well met, patting people. Everybody had a good time. And not only was he a Lieutenant General, he was the holder of the Congressional Medal of Honor. I said, did any of you generals ever know Oscar Petrus? This African-American Lieutenant General said, Oscar Petrus was my commanding officer in Vietnam when I received the Congressional Medal of Honor. And Oscar Petrus was Pig Petrus of Raleigh, for whom the parade ground at Paris Island, South Carolina is now named Petrus Field. And I'm so proud of the fact that I got to meet this Lieutenant General who was the commanding officer who was under the command of my friend from Raleigh, Oscar Petrus. And it's just something that Raleigh should be proud of. This man, Oscar Petrus, was retired. He was the executive officer of the 28th Marine Regiment, which raised the flags on Mount Suribachi. And the Raleigh Touch was there. Now, Hickey Johnston was wounded on Iwo Jima, and a high school friend of his, Alfred Williams, was also the deck on the ship. When Hickey was brought back, they were sending Marines forward, bringing wounded Marines back, and Alfred welcomed Hickey back to the ship. But at any rate...
Of course, Alfred was a member of our Rotary.
Well, he's president.
Exactly.
Yeah. Alfred's father was president, Alfred was president. He was also the day Hinkle was brought back wounded on Iwo Jima. But at any rate, I want to tell about Oscar Peaches and this Lieutenant General in the Marine Corps, and all these members swelled up with me with pride of having known Oscar Peaches when he caught baseball for State College and caught baseball for Portland High School, and his mother and daddy ran that little Milky Way soda shop over there. But anyway, that's a story that Rolly needs to remember.
Okay, we've got time for one more. As we've, by the way, we need to hang the interviews we did in May up because they were totally different. You aren't even the same people. Yeah, I do have a question. What do lifelong friends say to each other on the way home from our meetings?
Well,
hopefully more than that.
I have heard Billy Simpson say, she was a good-looking woman, wasn't she? And sometimes I agreed, sometimes I didn't agree. And I have often said, boy, that was a good program. Sometimes he would agree and I would disagree. But we always said we had a good time. But we got a bunch of old codgers back here in the corner. We like their company a lot. Some of them we like better than others, but we accept them all. All right.
Billy, what do you think? What do you talk about on the way home?
Well, Robert ride with me on the way home. But we talk about Rotary, what it means to us, the friendships we have in here, the camaraderie, and we look forward to seeing the members each week coming back. It's just a wonderful group. And say when I first got in it, Chancellor Cole brought me down, one was a young person. Well, all of them in there were about the fathers of friends of mine, just about. So it was hard to call them by first name, anything such as that. But as you stayed in, and other young people, like Robert was brought in just right after me, you got to know these men. They were wonderful fellows. They enjoyed talking to you. They were interested in what you were doing, but we learned a lot from them as far as business people here in Raleigh.
All right. Well, guys, I think we're out of time. Let's give a round of Let's not forget what national treasures we have here. Thank you, guys.
Rotarians, let's say with pride the four-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it
build goodwill and better friendships?
Fourth, will it be
beneficial to all concerned?
One quick note before we adjourn, I'd like to ask Past President Mary Moss to give us a bit of information.
Sure. If you see Wilson Payman, you will want